Hello my friends and welcome to Mobile Music Maker. I'm Logan Jacob. Today we're going to be diving back into the Chromatica AUM User Guide. This is part 4 of this series where we're actually finally getting into the second part of the user guide. This is the part that talks about signal routing. So today I want to go over hardware inputs and outputs as well as mix buses. Let's get into it. Now you will notice today that I am recording with the audio from my mic directly into AUM. That is because I need to be able to show you hardware inputs and outputs, so I couldn't just use my USB mic on Logic or something like that. So a little bit different today, but that's all right. Okay, so AUM, as it says in the user guide, AUM offers very flexible routing and supports multi-channel audio interfaces, internal buses for grouping, submixing, and effect sends, as well as multiple inter-app audio output ports. So it's very, very flexible. There's a lot of inputs and outputs that you can use in AUM. That's one of the great things about it. That's one of the things that producers and music creators like myself absolutely love about AUM. To create a hardware input, we're going to tap on an empty slot, which is anywhere you see this plus sign, and we're going to choose hardware input to show our available inputs. So if I click on that, I'm going to hit audio, and then up here, I'm going to choose hardware input, and you're going to see all of my available sources. Now I am running a Scarlett 8i6, which has 10 inputs available, which is pretty handy. So I've got my voice is actually in USB 2, which you can see over here. And I have a Arturio Microfreak plugged into USB 1. You can also see on here that you can create stereo mixes with a combination of 1 and 2. So if you're running into 2 different channels in your audio interface, you can mix those into one stereo channel, which is kind of nice. Another one of those handy features that AUM supports. So I'm going to create one with channel 1, which is going to be channel 1 coming in over the USB from my Scarlett 8i6. And this will be my Microfreak. Which you can hear I've got plugged in, and that is a hardware input that you're hearing. So I've got a 1/4-inch cable running out of that directly into the front of my Scarlett AI6 into channel 1. And that way I can do all kinds of stuff with my Microfreak, which I love. Okay, now if we want to be able to route this to the output, we're going to go down to the bottom of the channel, and we're going to click on an output slot to see where we want to send this signal to. And we have a variety of options again. We've got our hardware outputs. So this is all of the outputs that are available on the Scarlett. So right now I've got it going to 1 and 2, which is sending into my monitors and into my headphones. I can send 3 and 4 to something else, into a compressor or something like that. Wherever I need to send audio to, I can. And some of the other available things. So all of our hardware options are there in hardware output. And then we can also send inter-app audio or audio bus outputs. If I wanted to send it into another audio unit or another app to be able to do that, I can use that inter-app audio to send that. And then also we can create mix buses, which is the next section in our user guide. So I'll talk about those in just a minute. But I do want to point out real quick that AUM does detect feedback. So if you are, for instance, earlier when I was just kind of testing my setup, I had my monitors on and it detected that feedback and said, hey, you've got a mic on that is routing back to the same speakers, and it detects that and lets you know. So it's pretty nice to have that on. Now you can disable that. It automatically will disable that node for you if it's creating feedback, which is pretty nice. Or you can just tell it not to do that. So typically you want to avoid that by having all of your inputs, not be sending back out into a direct speaker or something like that. I hope you guys know how to avoid feedback at this point. Now, there are also other hardware sends available to you, and those are through basically the effect slots, and you can tell it how much of the signal you want to send to another output. So let's say that I was sending my voice into a compressor as well. I could do another hardware send in here, and let's say I have 3 and 4 going into a compressor, and then I get this knob to be able to say, okay, how much of that do I want to send out into an external compressor and then back in, or however I'm doing that, or reverb, or whatever I'm doing. I can adjust all of that stuff here, which is pretty handy. I don't typically do that very often. I use most of the built-in effects instead of going through external compressors because they're too expensive and the apps are cheap, so you might as well use those. I don't make enough money off of my music or off of these videos to worry about that kind of stuff. All right, so just if I want to get rid of that, again, like you saw in the video about nodes, I just drag it over to the left and hit the eject button. I can do the same thing with my audio outputs. I can just eject it if I need to, and now that audio is not going anywhere. So I have to say, okay, now where do I want this audio to go? Let's send it to the Scarlett. But we're actually going to do something a little bit different. So the next section of the user guide talks about the internal buses and how you can use them. There's a lot of great uses for these internal buses. You can use them as subgroups, you can use them as effect sends, you can use them for mixing. However you want to deal with it, you can. So the way that we do this is we're going to go down to our audio outputs, and to create a mix bus, we're just going to hit this button that says mix bus. And let's say we want to send my MicroFreak to mix bus A. And then I'm going to create a new audio channel. And for the input, instead of the hardware input, I'm going to go down to my mix bus, and I'm going to say this is going to be mix bus A. So now you'll notice that my MicroFreak audio, instead of coming out here, instead of going directly to the audio, is actually sending to the bus first and then going there. So if I turn down, you stop hearing it. Okay, so the audio is, even though it's showing up over here in channel 2, it's actually being routed to channel 3. Now you can change the name and color of these buses if you want to. So you can tap on it and it'll bring up this option here. So custom short name if you want. I want to say that this is the MicroFreak, so I'm just gonna put MF. And I can just pick a color that I want for that node. So let's say I want to go with this kind of a teal color here. And I can make it brighter or not as bright. Bing. And now those nodes are the custom color that I chose. Okay. And you can mess with those as much as you want to. That color is actually pretty hideous. So I'm going to back it down a little bit. It's a little intense for what we want. There we go. That looks nice. Now, one of the uses that Kymatica recommends for this is as a main mix. So there's not a main mixer in Kymatica. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import some channels from another project. And I showed you how to do this on one of the other videos. So if you need to learn how to do it, then you can find it there. So let's say that I want to mix all of this down to a master channel. So what I'm going to do then is grab the audio outputs of each of those, and I'm just going to send them to the same bus. So let's we'll just say we'll call B our master bus. And receiving from mix bus B, and I'm going to turn this all the way down because I'm going to go ahead and crank these up, but I don't want it to overpower my voice just yet. So now I've got those, and I'll kind of try to balance those a little bit by watching. I'm just watching how they're doing up there. This Magellan tends to be a little bit loud if you don't back it off. Okay, so now as I turn up bus B, you'll hear both of those start to show up. And this is handy as a master because you'll see that sometimes you're just getting a super hot signal and you know it's going to spike out really bad or something like that, and you want to be able to adjust it on a master bus, or sometimes you want to add master effects. If you don't want to have to do too much mastering later on in post, send it over to Logic or something like that, you can, you know, grab your effects here. So let's say we wanted to add you know, a compressor. And maybe I actually personally like, Yeah, I like this infected mushroom wider, and I'm actually going to put that in front of the compressor. And we'll just spread our signal out here nice and wide. And hopefully if you're wearing headphones, you can hear how that affected the overall signal. So now I can play around with this master. If I just want to have music underneath while I'm talking, I can bring it down or whatever. And I've got all of that going here. So what I use that for a lot of times is if I'm playing guitar with and I've got a bunch of synths and stuff generating things, I'll use a master channel to be able to pull the entire background back so that my guitar comes through or something like that. But of course you can use it as you're recording. I make a lot of videos. You've probably seen my January recording videos and stuff like that. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll send everything into a master channel and record that channel and then do the screen recording. And I'll use that master channel and I'll go in and add, ozone or some other effects to it to just make it up to production quality a little bit, do some light mastering in Logic or something like that. And then add that into the video to put it back online so that you kind of get a better sound quality there. So it is handy for that, for being able to take everything up and down there. So that's one of the nice things. You can add your EQ to it. Whatever you want to do, you can do that with that master channel. Okay. You can also, as I said, create subgroups, and that's kind of what I've got going now, where my voice is actually coming through just straight into the hardware, and then everything else is going into this audio, which is nice, into this bus as a subgroup, which is pretty nice. And then of course you can, add your own effects and stuff to that subgroup if you want. And one of the other handy things you can do with this is you can actually create an effects send. So let's say that I don't want that, or I've got my master channel here, but then I also want to send it to another bus that it will handle, adding a little bit of reverb or something like that. And I want to use the same reverb for multiple channels. So what I can do is hit this plus sign, and I can go down here to sends like we did with the hardware send and do a bus send. So let's send this to bus C. And bus C is going to be my effects. Go down to mix bus, bus C. Now I've got a lot sending to that channel at the moment. I'm going to go ahead and pull that down. And let's shorten this. We'll call this effects. And the color's just fine. I don't really mind that. So let's say that I want to put my reverb on this, and I want to control how much of each synth is going into that reverb, and then also how much of that reverb signal is being, sent back into my master or something like that. So let's do an audio extension, and we're going to grab Bleece Reverb. I'm sure you guys are tired of me using Bleece Reverb by now, but that's okay. So now, if I bring this up, you'll hear that it's got the reverb on it. If I bring this one up, you get some of the dry signal in there as well. Now what I can actually do, again, if I'm recording to a master track, is I can actually send this effect bus back into my master, which is bus B, so that whatever I send here is going into bus B. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank this all the way up, and I'm just going to stop talking for a minute so you can hear it. And I'm going to bring in the reverb in and out so you can hear the difference there. So that's a really handy feature. Now, what some people do when they're recording is they'll actually record both of these channels, and they will have, that way they can go into Logic and they can mix in that affected channel as well, which is pretty nice. Now, this also works really well as a signal splitting device. Now, one thing I do want to show you real quick is you can tell it how much of a certain effect that you want to go into. So let me pull this master up a little bit. with this knob. So if you want less of the Magellan going into the reverb and more of the Micro Freak, you can make those adjustments. And they're very subtle adjustments, of course, but they do matter to some people. Okay, so let me show you how to do some signal splitting with this, which is pretty handy. So what I'm going to do is we're actually going to just get rid of this channel completely. Okay, so sounds the same. Got that cool thing. Now let's say we wanted to split our signal up so that we could maybe pan left and right and have different effects coming in from different directions, or we wanted to just have all these different effects and be able to blend them as we want. So what we can do is we can actually split the signal. And one of the ways that you can do this, even if your app doesn't support it, now there are apps like Scatterbrain that support sending multiple signals out, but one of the ways that you can do this is through creating a bus. So what I'm going to do is I'll send again to bus A, and I'm going to create 3 different channels that are all receiving from that same bus. And then what we can do then is we can put different effects on each bus to create a different sound. I'm going to turn all these down just a little bit so they're not super overpowering when we hit play. Let's see how that sounds by itself. Make that a little nicer. I'm also going to slow us down just because it's a little too active for me. That's nice. Okay. So now let's say that I want one bus to have a particular delay on it. So we'll go in here and let's go to, I'm a big fan of Cosmonaut. So I'm going to add Cosmonaut to this bus. And we'll go ahead and hit play so we can hear what it's doing. Yeah, we'll just use one of the presets for now. And let's say that we want that to be just a really subtle effect in the background. So if we bring this up, you can hear both, but that delay is fairly subtle back there. And we can bring it louder or softer as we want. Okay, and then let's say on the other one that we want to let's put a little bit of overdrive on this one. And I'm also going to filter this one so that it's only the real high end that's getting that overdrive. Scooted right past the filter I wanted. The alphabet is not my friend. And let's say we also want to maybe put a little bit of a filter effect on that. I like the slow moving. Tends to be more in my alley anyway. Okay, so I've kind of got that hanging out in the background. I've got my delayed one hanging out. And then I can also mix in the dry signal as well. And let's say that we want to split I need to send those to a master bus so I can turn them all down. Now let's say we want to split one of them all the way over to the right, and we want to send this one all the way over to the left. And again, if you're not wearing headphones, this probably isn't going to sound great for you. Hopefully you're wearing headphones. So now we can hear our delayed in the left side. And now we've got our kind of filtery, distorted thing happening on the right. And then we've got our master coming in here. And let's say that the fairly dry one, we want to maybe add a little bit of reverb to or something, just to warm it up a bit. So that's pretty nice. Now we have this really nice thing. And again, let's say we want to send this to one master channel that I can then mix and bring the whole thing up or down. Oop, not hardware. So now once I kind of get this balanced the way I want, I can mix it up or down. And there's all kinds of fun stuff you can do with this. Let me just play a little bit. I want to show you one fun thing that I like to do sometimes, which is to bring, I like to set it up like that and have an LFO control the faders of what's coming in, kind of slowly bringing it in and out. So I'm just going to bring up Rosetta LFO. And we're going to have a really slow rate for the first one. And that's sending on CC13. And then we're just going to turn off the second one. A really slightly faster rate. And that's coming in on 15. We've got them both on a sine. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm going to route this so that we are getting the LFO through MIDI control. So we need to send that LFO to MIDI control. And then over here, we're going to click on this. And we're going to say channel controls, the volume, and we want that coming in on channel 1, number 13. And you'll notice, even if I turn everything down, when I turn this on, we should see, now we can see it moving up and down. I had to mess with it a little bit because for some reason I had it set on the wrong channel. And then if I put this one on channel 15, or on CC 15, so channel 1, we'll go to CC 15, we can see them both moving at a slightly different rate up and down. And if we listen to that, what that does is it brings those up and down in the mix. So that sometimes we're getting the clean channel, sometimes we're getting the channel with extra stuff happening in it. And I like to set this pretty slow. Okay, and it just creates a really neat little texture effect there. I could play with that for hours. Okay, so that gives you an idea of some different ways that you can use the audio routing, the signal routing with buses, through audio outputs and stuff like that. I hope you find that useful. In the next one, we will talk about multi-bus audio unit plugins, which I briefly mentioned there, something like Scatterbrain, that allows you to send from the effect into multiple buses, so you don't have to create all these buses like this. And I've done that before in some of the other videos as well, so you can check those out. All right, if you have any questions, please throw them in the comments below. I would appreciate it if you give it a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. Share it with your friends. If you know somebody that's just getting started with AUM, I think this series is probably pretty useful to a lot of people. I mentioned in a comment the other day that I'm learning stuff from this as well. So I highly suggest that you check it out and send it to other people. Thank you very much for tuning in with me, and we'll see you next time. Take care.